podcast. We are going to get started here in a second. I am basically just streaming a few political events, kind of testing the waters for a podcast I'd like to maybe start doing that mostly covers political things and um, a lot of gender related issues too. By the way, happy Transability, which was yesterday. I plan on releasing a produced video that is basically going to be a Gender 101 kind of video for people that don't understand the trans issue. Um, but it's also helpful for people that do kind of understand it to understand some different terms and sort of why it's as complicated as it is. But today we're covering the White House meeting between Donald Trump and Zoran Mamdani, the mayor-elect of New York City. The two were scheduled to meet today, and originally it was billed as a non-media event, but we got about a half an hour press conference from the two of them in the White House. So just to kind of cue this up, Zoran Mamdani is a democratic socialist, so kind of on the, well, let's see, camera-wise, the left. Yeah, I guess in America we would call it the left, and international sort of normative understanding of politics, it would be sort of the center left, but in American politics, it's more, left. Donald Trump is kind of a far right figure, but he's more of a fascist slash populist nationalist kind of figure. So the two are basically at opposite ends of, at least in America, the political spectrum, and in many ways, kind of sort of the more palatable versions of, I mean, uh, of some rather ideological movements historically. That being said, democratic socialism is extremely common around the world and especially in Europe, and it's not particularly extreme at all. It's kind of a center left ideology internationally. But in the United States, it's considered left, and Donald Trump is pretty far right. So they're very much at odds. Donald Trump called Mamdani a socialist, or I'm sorry, he called him a communist, and he called him like wacky and that kind of thing. And Mamdani has called Trump a fascist, and they've really gone at it in the media. But I think you're going to be surprised because as much as they're on paper political enemies, um, this meeting really surprised me. I just watched it. We're just going to briefly go over parts of it. Let's listen. Okay, here we go.
Thank you very much. We've just had a great meeting, a really good, very productive meeting. We have one thing in common. We want this city of ours that we love to do very well. And I wanted to congratulate the mayor. He really ran an incredible race against a lot of smart people, starting with the early primaries against some very tough people, very smart people. And he beat them easily. And I congratulated him. And we talked about some things in very strong common, like housing and getting housing built, and food and prices, and the price of oil is coming way down. That anything I do is going to be good for New York. If I can get prices down, it's good for New York, and we've got them down, way down from last year. We have, as you know, I've been saying to a lot of people, Walmart said that Thanksgiving this year is exactly 25% less than last year, so that's good for New York, good for everybody. But I just want to congratulate. I think you're going to have hopefully a really great.
I'm going to kind of talk over this a bit because this is very just generic stuff. But it kind of, first of all, it starts off in this very non-contentious situation. It might surprise people a little bit to see that. And, yep, they shake hands right away.
I appreciate it.
Let's listen to Zoran.
The president, and as he said, it was a productive meeting focused on a place of shared admiration and love, which is New York City, and the need to deliver affordability to New Yorkers, the 8.5 million people who call our city their home, who are struggling to afford life in the most expensive city in the United States of America. We spoke about rent, we spoke about groceries, we spoke about utilities, we spoke about the different ways in which people are being pushed out, and I appreciated the time with the president, I appreciated the conversation. I look forward to working together to deliver that affordability for New Yorkers.
Thank you very much. Any questions, please?
And here's where it starts to get interesting. I'll jump in from time to time, but we're just gonna play some of these questions, and you'll get a real flavor for what was surprising about this meeting.
President Trump, Stephen Nelson from the New York Post. I've got a question for you and then also one for the mayor-elect.
Sure.
For you, you've referred to Mr. Mamdani as a communist. Could you describe why you feel that way? And also, will you do anything to stop him from arresting Prime Minister Netanyahu if he visits New York?
Well, we didn't discuss your second part of the question, and on your first part, I mean, he's got views that are a little out there, but who knows? I mean, we're going to see what works, or he's going to change also. We all change. I changed a lot. From when I first came to office. It's now quite a while ago. It's quite a while. My first term was great. We had the greatest economy in the history of our country. We're doing even better now. We're doing much better now than we did even the first term. And I can tell you some of my views have changed. And we had discussions on some things. I'm not going to discuss what they were, but that I feel very confident that he can do a very good job. I think he is going to surprise some conservative people, actually. And some very liberal people he won't surprise them because they already like him.
And for Mr. Mamdani, it sounds like you had a productive discussion, but just days ago you referred to President Trump as a despot who had betrayed the country. You said you would be his worst nightmare and accused him of having a fascist agenda. Are you planning to retract any of these remarks?
Can I just take a minute to look at Trump's desk here? He's got a fucking stealth bomber little toy on the desk. And then he has his fucking his illegal cryptocurrency that he's hawking out of the White House. I mean, this is insane. Utterly insane. And again, he's also notably gilded the entire White House in an era of extreme unaffordability. He's put up all this gold, gaudy, glitzy shit. But in the meantime, I think even just that first question, Donald Trump literally, there was a question that basically was premised on, incorrectly on the premise that Mamdani is kind of an unmainstream, far outside the mainstream politician. And Donald Trump just sat there and defended him. That's why the title of this stream is Trump Gets Steamrolled by Mamdani. I think they went into this and Trump was like, I hate this guy. And they clearly came out of the meeting that they just had. And Donald Trump was nothing but impressed by him. All right, let's continue.
In order to improve your relationship?
I think both President Trump and I, we are very clear about our positions and our views, and what I really appreciate about the president is that the meeting that we had focused not on places of disagreement, which there are many, and also focused on the shared purpose that we have in serving New Yorkers. And frankly, that is something that could transform the lives of the 8.5 million people who are currently struggling under a cost of living crisis, with 1 in 4 living in poverty. And the meeting came back again and again to what it could look like to lift those New Yorkers out of struggle and start to deliver them a city that they could do more than just struggle to afford it, but actually start to live in it.
And I've been called much worse than a despot, so it's not that insulting. But I think he'll change his mind after we get to working together. Yes, please.
Mr. President, Anthony Marshak from MTV Lebanon. I would like to ask you a question about the Middle East regarding, you said that Hezbollah in Lebanon is not in a good position. And Lebanon now is the final unresolved after Gaza and Syria. Given your assessment, what do you say for the Lebanese today? It's the Independence Day in Lebanon. And what is your next move to push toward disarmament? The disarmament of Hezbollah.
Well, we are pushing for total disarmament of Hamas and, frankly, everybody else.
All right, so let me just pause here for a second. Trump incorrectly thought the reporter from Lebanon was asking about Hamas. Hezbollah is a political faction in Lebanon. Hamas is a political faction in Gaza, in Palestine. So, first of all, Trump is confused right out of the gate. Secondly, and just as importantly, the question was basically what's next for peace in Lebanon, and Trump doesn't answer that question. He goes on to spin a tale about how he solved 8 conflicts, and you can look this up, but he hasn't solved any conflicts. He's inherited a couple of situations that resolved themselves, and he claimed credit for it.
And we actually have peace in the Middle East. As you know, the King of Saudi Arabia just left yesterday. We had some great meetings, and he's made a contribution toward the United States of more than $1 trillion. We have now over $20 trillion coming in. No country has ever had anything like that, not even close. If you go to 2 trillion or 1 trillion, it's a lot. We have 20 or $21 trillion. I think that Hezbollah has been a problem. And
okay, so now he goes back to Hezbollah, so good for him.
Big problem. We're working with Lebanon. We're working with everybody in the Middle East. That's another thing I think we have in common. We want to see peace in the Middle East, and we actually have now, for the first time, peace in the Middle East after 3,000 years.
Voted for the president last November on Hillside Avenue and Fordham Road. I asked them why. I heard again and again two major reasons. One was that they wanted an end to forever wars. They wanted an end to the taxpayer dollars we had funding violations of human rights, and they wanted to address the cost of living crisis. And I appreciated the chance to discuss both of those things.
He said a lot of my voters actually voted for him, and I'm okay with that.
That's a true fact, actually. About 1 in 10 of the people that voted for Donald Trump in the 2024 presidential election went on to vote for Zoran Mamdani for mayor, meaning that that group of people, which, is over, I think it's over 100,000 people, basically didn't really focus on ideology. They focused on practical issues and maybe a little bit of populism more than anything else.
I'll do that. I'll sign it. Give it to me. I'll sign it in a minute. That's pretty good.
Mr. President, you've threatened to send federal troops to New York City. You both have differences when it comes to ICE agents in New York City. Mr. Mamdani, you've called ICE a rogue government entity. I wonder how you reconcile your differences on both of those issues.
Well, I think we're going to work them out, and I think.
By the way, can I just? I'm so distracted right now. These reporters are so funny. Look at them. This guy just. First of all, they're just on their. There's the old man on their knees, and then this guy just waddles off, and this guy immediately is like, "I'm getting in there. I'm taking this great position." I was so distracted by that.
If we have known murderers and known drug dealers and some very bad people, we want to get them out. And the mayor wants to have peace. We discussed this at great length, actually, maybe more than anything else. He wants to have a safe New York. Ultimately, a safe New York is going to be a great New York. If it's not safe, no matter how well we do with pricing and with anything else, we can talk about anything you want. If you don't have safe streets, it's not going to be a success. So we're going to work together. We're going to make sure that if there are horrible people there, we want to get them out. I think he wants to get them out maybe more than I do. So we'll work together. We discussed it at great length. Yes, please.
Two questions, if I may. One for you, Mr. President, on BBC in a second. But first of all, for the mayor-elect. You're both from different parts of the political spectrum. You're both populists, though, and I just wonder to what extent the president's campaign style, his techniques, his social media use inspired any part of your campaign.
Well, I actually told the president that so much of the focus of our campaign has been on the cost of living crisis. And when we asked those New Yorkers who had voted for the president, when we saw an increase in his numbers in New York City, that came back to the same issue: cost of living, cost of living, cost of living. And they spoke about the cost of groceries, the cost of rent, the cost of Con Ed, the cost of childcare. And too often politicians are looking to lecture to New Yorkers what they should care about.
Can I also just take a minute to comment on this visual? Now, look, I understand why Donald Trump's sitting at the Resolute desk here as the president, but it's interesting that they staged it this way, because Mamdani is not a particularly tall man, is just towering over Donald Trump, and really comes off quite personable, and it's really, they're not using this space to Trump's advantage at all.
As opposed to listen. And when we spoke to those voters who voted for President Trump, we heard them speak about cost of living. We focused on that same cost of living, and that's where I am really looking forward to delivering for New Yorkers in partnership with the president on the affordability agenda.
And I think we have to work a little bit. We talked about Con Edison. We have to work a little bit on getting the prices, because we've gotten fuel prices way
$1 billion. You're going to speak to
There's a question here about him suing the BBC.
He's got a big immigration
doesn't really pertain to American politics that much. It's not a big deal.
Prime Minister's a good man.
You have a chance to speak this week.
I haven't spoken this week.
Mr. President, have you spoken to President Zelensky, or do you intend to meet with him? President Zelensky, about your plan? Are you going to meet with him?
I've spoken with their people. We have a plan. It's horrible what's happening. It's a war that should have never happened. It would have never happened if I was president, and it's a shame. And
one thing that you start to notice about Donald Trump when he speaks about any particular issue, especially some tricky issues like Ukraine, is that he has these memorized lines, right? So the question was, have you spoken to Zelensky this week about the peace plan in Ukraine? And Donald Trump immediately comes out of the gate and says, this is a terrible war. It's a war that should have never happened. It never would have happened if I had been president. he says that literally every time the word Ukraine is mentioned in any question. That is his weird, like, idiot savant genius when it comes to marketing, is he just constantly repeats the same talking point, even if it's not true, even if it's kind of silly. He just says it over and over again until people start to believe him because he keeps going back to it so consistently.
I thought they should have acted quicker, but it's a cold winter, and a lot of the you talk about utilities, but a lot of the big energy producing plants have been under attack, to put it mildly, to put it nicely. Yeah, we have a way of getting peace, or we think we have a way of getting peace. He's going to have to approve it. Just so sad, so many people. You know, last month they lost 25,000 soldiers. This is something, we haven't seen anything like this since the Second World War. And they're averaging 6,000 or 7,000 a week between the two of them, dead soldiers. And it goes on, and I think they're getting reasonably close, but I don't want to predict. I would have said that would have been one of my early ones. I did 8 peace deals of countries, including...
Again, Trump falsely referring to him constructing and crafting 8 peace deals. This has been debunked. In fact, let's just... let's just show you a brief debunking of that. Here's the 8 wars he claims to have ended, and sorry about that. Oh, I can't look at that one. Okay. Here we go. Israel, Hamas. He didn't end that. Israel just is running out of people to kill, so it's coming to an end. Israel, Iran. Trump started that, so I guess he stopped it at some level, but he didn't create peace at all. Egypt, Ethiopia. There's basically nothing happening there, you know, and frankly, nobody knows about this one because it's such a weird conflict. It's about a river system of power generation and whether the whether the Ethiopians can dam the river that flows into the Nile. And yeah, it's a whole thing, but it's not really a Trump war that got solved. India, Pakistan, that was going to get solved anyway. Serbia, Kosovo, still not solved. Rwanda and Congo, still not solved at all. And then Armenia, Azerbaijan, you know, there was a ceasefire, I guess, and I'm sure the United States helped push for it. But again, Russia was the main player in that one. And then Cambodia, Thailand. Okay, I guess it's a border issue with, and I don't know much about this one. Let's see here. So the U.S. threatened sanctions if they didn't knock it off, and they kind of stopped. So I guess partial credit on that one. But you know, it's just such a bullshit claim. Oops. Here we go.
About this Ukraine plan.
Yeah.
President Zelensky said today that his country would risk either giving up a partner or giving up its dignity. There's been criticism that this deal...
And I'm going to
Deal
skip
would have
over
been
the
never
Ukraine
started.
question because we've already had one.
In New York City.
Look, I think that there are many things in our city where we have to own the responsibility of it, things that existed long before the president was the president. And those are also part of the message of our campaign, was to take on a broken politics of the past. And I ran against a number of candidates who represented different versions of that past. And what we found time and again is that working people were left behind in the politics of our city. And what we're looking to do is put those people right back at the heart of our politics so that we don't have a situation where we're in the wealthiest city in the history of the world, and yet 1 in 5 can't even afford $2.90 for a Metro card.
Mr. Mamdani.
You know, we had some interesting conversation, and some of his ideas really are the same ideas that I have. But a big thing on cost.
Let's stop there. So, you know, Mamdani is known for talking about affordability and expenses and things a lot. That was his entire mayoral campaign. I would say that the fact that Trump is saying that we have a lot of the same ideas is kind of a big deal because, again, he campaigned openly as a democratic socialist, and for Donald Trump to say we have a lot of the same ideas, it means two things. One, my thesis of this video, which is that Trump got steamrolled by Zoran in the meeting, is probably true. Secondly, and this is a little bit more interesting, is the fact that you know, left-wing populism was something that Donald Trump sort of falsely appealed to during his campaigns. He always talked about helping out the little people and going up against the sort of coastal elites and kind of, flyover country. Left populism does something similar, but it doesn't focus on geography. It focuses on class. And so when you talk about affordability, it's something the two sides can relate to, and it's something that people agree on. And the ideas of how to achieve affordability are probably coming from two different perspectives. But Donald Trump is the type of person who doesn't give a shit about ideology that much. And so if you have a charismatic leader like Zoran talking to a gullible and prone to flattery president like Trump, it's conceivable that Zoran could get through to him.
The new word is affordability. Another word is just groceries. It's sort of an old-fashioned word, but it's very accurate. And they're coming down high. They were, we had, both of us, we had the highest inflation in the history of our country the last 4 years under the Biden administration. And we've got inflation down now to a normal number. It's going to go even a little bit lower than that. Katie, do you have something?
Mr. President, thank you so much. Mr. Mamdani often talks about New York City being covered by international law, that they will follow international law. Doesn't often talk about the U.S. Constitution. What is your response to that?
Well, I don't know what you're referring to in terms of it can be covered by international law, local law. It's covered by a lot of laws, but it's covered by U.S. law. Are you referring to anything in particular?
He just says that they're a city that endorses and enforces international law. Is that at odds with
No,
U.S.
I don't
law?
know. Would you want to? Do you want to respond?
Yeah, I think what I've shared with the president is our desire to not only follow the laws of our own city, laws that protect New Yorkers, but also a desire for consistency in our politics across the board. And that's something that we've talked about and something that I know many New Yorkers want.
So you work with ICE? We work with ICE then?
We discussed ICE and New York City, and I spoke about how the laws that we have in New York City allow for New York City government to speak to the federal administration for about 170 serious crimes. The concerns that many New Yorkers have are around the enforcement of immigration laws on New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs, and most recently we're talking about a mother and her 2 children, how this has very little to do with what that is.
Mr. Mamdani,
What we did is we discussed crime. More than ICE per se, we discussed crime. And he doesn't want to see crime, and I don't want to see crime. And I have very little doubt that we're not going to get along on that issue. He wants to, and he said some things that were very interesting as to housing construction, and he wants to see houses.
So let me just break this down a little bit here. So the question was about immigration. Donald Trump starts talking about crime more than anything, and they kind of get away from the immigration issue. And Donald Trump basically says, we don't see eye to eye on crime, but he had some interesting ideas. Again, so turning this very critical press question. So the press is very right-wing. You have to understand that the White House purged the press corps of liberal journalists. It's kind of silly. They have 1 or 2 left. They have 38 conservative influencers and then 2 traditional journalists now. And so it's a heavily right-wing news corps. And when they get a lot of these questions, they're framed in a way that kind of makes it seem like Mamdani. It's Mamdani. It's sometimes hard to say that. Mamdani's policies are a little bit extreme or left wing or whatever, and so this is yet another example of Donald Trump rejecting the press's right wing framing of the issue. In this case, the issue was immigration. Donald Trump pivoted to crime, and he agreed that they share the goal of living in a safe city, although they have different disagreements about how to get there. And then he pivots to yet another issue to reframe the question about something they agree on, which is housing and building housing.
Go up. He wants to see a lot of houses created, a lot of apartments built, etc. And we actually people would be shocked, but I want to see the same thing.
Mr. Mamdani, anti-Israel protesters.
Jack?
Yeah, Mr. President, I wanted to know one of the policies as well that Mayor-elect Mamdani talked a number of times about on the campaign was shifting the tax burden for property taxes from what he called minority communities to white-based communities and putting more taxes on white people. I also noticed that...
So again, this is another right-wing influencer who's masquerading as a journalist, asking a question about See, Mamdani made a statement about how he wants there to be equitable property taxes in New York City, and basically he made a comment that some white neighborhoods had received investment and tax abatements and things that have helped them out, whereas more diverse neighborhoods have not received those same benefits, and he wanted to see a more even-handed approach. So he referred to white neighborhoods as having received those benefits. So I'm going to rewind it slightly, but this reporter is asking a very hostile question, misconstruing Mamdani's statement.
From what he called minority communities to white-based communities and putting more taxes on white people. I also noticed that in your acceptance speech you didn't mention anything about America or Christians or white people in general, and so I didn't know if that was one of the
by the way,
policies that you guys had spoken
this is something that's so subtle, but I want to.
anything
So,
about
this
America.
guy's asking the question. Hold on, let me go back. Asking this racist question, and then he asks, "Can I answer?" And then they do a little shoulder tap.
I didn't know if that was one of the
That is a sign of extreme comfort and a sign of like, I am comfortable here. We're getting along. We're doing a good job. Just one more time. And
what
with
he
that sound.
called minority communities to white-based communities.
Okay, so
and putting
Zoran
more
gets an
taxes
idea. He
on
turns
white
to
people.
Trump.
I also noticed that in your acceptance speech you didn't mention.
He basically,
didn't
do you mind if I
mention
respond?
anything
I
about
think, or something like
America
that.
Or Christians or white people in general, and so I didn't know if that was one of the policies that you guys had spoken about.
We focused on affordability. We focused on the cost of living crisis. What I will say is that I am very much interested in property tax reform because what we see right now in New York City is a system that is so inequitable that it can't even stand up in court. And the president and I spoke about the importance of not only building more housing, but also making sure that regulation of housing is something that is manageable to actually get through and not the cause of yet another weight that we see in our city.
So a couple things here. First of all, notice how Mamdani is wearing a blue tie. Trump's got his fucking stupid red tie on, but it is kind of the colors that we match up to the parties on like the electoral maps. But more importantly, so one issue that's really interesting about Mamdani that is not a traditional sort of leftist position or like at least a technocratic Democratic Party position is that he has spoken repeatedly about the need to lower the regulatory barrier to construction and building housing and maybe some other things like food carts in New York City and stuff like that. And he's not wrong. Like there are, I support health and safety regulations and, any kind of regulation that makes sense. But for small businesses and for like people trying to compete with big giant businesses, it's really hard for small businesses to navigate the, obstacle course of regulations. And so it's actually anti-corporate in some way to kind of waive some of that for smaller developers and more independent businesses.
To be clear, you're continuing this idea of race-based property taxes.
No, to be very clear,
That's what you said.
no, the use of the term was a description of neighborhoods, not a description of intent.
So you intend to tax the whiter neighborhoods more?
No, we intend to create a fair property tax system because we want a New York City that is not only fair and equitable, but also one that every New Yorker can afford.
Please, go ahead.
Mr. Mamdani, anti-Israel protesters just targeted a synagogue in New York. Are you concerned about Jewish New Yorkers feeling welcome and safe in the city? And President Trump, you've threatened to cut off federal funding to New York City. What policies would prompt you to do that? Would that be city-run grocery stores? Would it be something else?
Well, I think if we didn't get along, whether it's cut off or just make it a little bit difficult or not give as much, we want to see, I use the term, we don't want good money going after bad, and we don't want that to happen. I don't think that's going to happen. I did say, subject to what policies are being said. We had a meeting today that actually surprised me. He wants to see no crime. He wants to see housing being built. He wants to see rents coming down, all things that I agree with.
Okay, so again, this is another instance where Donald Trump is explicitly going out of his way, despite a question, I don't remember the question, but really turning the conversation to a positive answer towards Mamdani and his policies. And again, he wants, and he acts surprised that Mamdani doesn't want crime. Like I don't know if he's stupid or what, but he literally thought going in that Mamdani wanted there to be crime in New York City. And he's now convinced that Mamdani doesn't want crime in New York City. And that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Because the reality is that no matter what your policies are, you're like, it's not a question of like whether you want the outcome of crime. It's a question of how you achieve that outcome. And so I don't know if he literally thought Mamdani wanted crime or whatever, but he now is convinced correctly that Mamdani wants to lower crime. He's convinced that Mamdani wants to increase the housing supply and lower the rents, which were all things that he's always said. But Trump needs to hear it, and he needs to hear it in a way that flatters his ego. And so he's getting a little bit of firsthand of that at this time.
Now, we may disagree how we get there. The rent coming down, I think one of the things I really gleaned very much today, he'd like to see him come down, ideally by building a lot of additional housing.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate way. He agrees with that, and so do I. But if I read the newspapers and the stories, I don't hear that.
Again, Trump defending Mamdani over what his perception of the media narrative about Mamdani is. Now, the problem is here that Trump lives in a right-wing media bubble. By the way, most of America lives in a right-wing media bubble. You know, when I was growing up, we always heard this thing about the liberal media, but the truth is that the vast majority of Americans now are being force-fed conservative media, whether it be through right-wing talk radio, right-wing mainstream networks that are like increasingly going after right-wing audiences, or alternative media that's right-wing. Either way, though, like, I think when I read the numbers like on YouTube, influencers or streamers, or when I read the numbers on radio, it's like 7-1, 8-1, 9-1 kind of ratio. So for every one like dedicated listener there is to, like, let's say the Majority Report, or I don't know, the Young Turks or something, there's like 7 or 8 fucking right-wing people listening to some right-wing show. It is actually dramatically imbalanced, our media. Now, that's made up for a little bit by the fact that sort of mainstream culture tends to be a little bit center left, but the news industry as something people sit around and do and listen to is very right-leaning. When you get on, like, what is it? What's the default browser for a computer these? Is it Bing.com? Bing.com force feeds you Fox News feed. It's like crazy. There's like so much right-wing subtle infiltration of like mainstream spaces that's why your grandma got radicalized in Arizona. She's reading fucking Fox News through her Bing.com search engine because she doesn't know how to download Google Chrome or Firefox or whatever. And so the entire media infrastructure is very right-wing. Donald Trump absolutely lives in that infrastructure. He lives in an infrastructure where he hears no alternative media. He only hears right-wing narratives. And the right-wing narrative about Mamdani is he's a left-wing socialist communist who's trying to destroy New York City. And when he hears Mamdani say, actually, I support building more housing in New York City, which would create an increase in supply and therefore diminish demand as well, thereby lowering rent to try to balance out the demand, he is impressed because he has never heard him, and he is now seeing through the right-wing media fucking caricature of this man and seeing the actual human being. And so he's praising him.
But I heard him say it today, and I think that's a very positive step. No, I don't expect, I expect to be helping him, not hurting him. A big help, because I want New York City to be great. Look, I love New York City. It's where I come from. I spent a lot of years there. Now I'm right here. We took a big setback with the mayor that we had, named de Blasio. I thought it was a tremendous setback for the city. I think this mayor can do some things that are going to be really great.
Mr. President, Mr. President,
Mr. President, you.
Thank you, Mr. President. You're a billionaire. You have a different address nowadays than you used to, but you used to call New York City home. Would you feel comfortable living in New York City under a Mamdani administration?
Yeah, I would. I really would, especially after the meeting. Absolutely.
All right, that's a huge. I think that's maybe the most revealing question that was asked. Actually, a good question by the reporter. Would you, Mr. President, feel comfortable living in New York City after meeting with Zoran Mamdani? And Trump basically said, yes, I would. He didn't even wait for the question to finish. He immediately jumped in and said yes. And he said, especially after the meeting. So again, to reinforce this, Trump went in thinking that this was some leftist caricature like Fidel Castro figure. And he was so charmed and so steamrolled by this very charismatic, brilliant politician that he now is not even just saying, oh, he's not that bad. Trump is literally saying he would love to live in the city again for the first time in a while because of how good this meeting went. That's why I say Trump got steamrolled. We
agree on a lot more than I would have thought. I think I want him to do a great job, and we'll help him do a great job. You know, he may have different views, but in many ways, you know, we were discussing when Bernie Sanders was out of the race, I picked up a lot of his votes, and people had no idea because he was strong on not getting ripped off in trade and lots of the things that I've practiced and been very successful on. Tariffs, a lot of things. Bernie Sanders and I agreed on much more than people thought. And when he was put out of the race, I think quite unfairly, if you want to know the truth, many of the Bernie Sanders voters voted for me. And I felt very comfortable, frankly, in seeing that and saying that. And, you know, it just turned out to be a statistical truth. But no, I feel very comfortable. I would feel very, very comfortable being in New York, and I think much more so after the meeting. Yes, please.
All right, a couple things there. First of all, Donald Trump uses this Bernie Sanders talking point as it's almost like a memory that a dementia patient would sort of like refer to from like 37 years ago. Donald Trump in the 2016 campaign, in my opinion, falsely claimed he agreed with Bernie Sanders on a bunch of shit to try to woo Bernie voters to vote for him rather than Hillary Clinton. Of course, it was irrational and stupid for anybody on the left to ever vote for Donald Trump. And so to the extent that he was successful in that regard says something about the stupidity of certain voters. But I will say this. Whatever folks think about that race, full disclosure, I worked on the Clinton campaign that year, although my personal politics are far, far more in line with Mamdani's. I would say that Donald Trump's appeal to left behind, left out, working class, non-elite Americans is something that he's always been good at, and Mamdani has also demonstrated the ability to do the same thing. Now, the other thing I wanted to point out here is that Mamdani is very, very smart in staging this meeting. Here's why. His agenda in New York City will live and fall by his popularity and by his ability to convince other politicians in his orbit to align with his viewpoints. If he's hated and pigeonholed, he will never get anything done. So the fact that he's up here courting favor with the President of the United States and in a way that kind of positions the Democratic Party as like sort of like the shitty institutional hierarchical kind of off-kilter thing that's keeping great progress from being made is very smart. It does two things. First of all, it gives him clout with like people that you wouldn't expect, the people that supported Trump. Secondly, and more importantly, it puts it generates a sort of tension with the Democratic Party. Like, hey, we better be nice to this guy, otherwise, he's got the ability to completely go around us and just sort of do this populist direct appeal to the people. And it's very, very smart.
I have a question for you, but a very quick one for the mayor. Why did you fly here? Aren't trains greener?
Okay, this is like a Valley Girl stupid fucking question. It's the question that you get when you have somebody who's dedicated to environmental justice who happens to use a product of sort of like industrial America. Okay, a plane is a common way of getting around, and just because you know, if you're an environmentalist, you're entitled to also like not live like a fucking hermit in a cave with a loincloth. You get to live in your society. You just want to make your society better. And this is such a stupid gotcha Valley Girl question. It's just fucking stupid. I hate
form of transit, and I want to make sure that they're all affordable in New York City, and that's why making buses fast and free is a centerpiece of our campaign.
There is a bus that goes.
Well, but I know, but if he flew, that's a lot quicker too. You know, I mean, he's working very hard for him to be. That's a very long drive. I'll stick up for you. You know.
All right, this is so interesting though. Again, Donald Trump didn't have to do this. He could have been like, oh, let's watch him have to explain his way out of that one. But Donald Trump not only like steps over Mamdani a little bit to like defend him, but then also like literally says, I'm going to stick up for you on this one. Again, Donald Trump got completely steamrolled by the charisma and cleverness of Zoran Mamdani to the point where he's staving off stupid right-wing questions and like literally interfering with the right-wing media's agenda of tearing down Zoran.
The plane takes you 30 minutes and driving takes you a long
Mr.
time.
President, I was wondering if you could clear up some confusion around a Washington Post report. There was this explosive report that the Coast Guard is no longer going to characterize swastikas and nooses as hate symbols. DHS called that a lie and fake news. Can you clear up?
I don't know anything about it. When was this written?
I think yesterday.
Well, look, the Coast Guard's an incredible group of people. I know them very well. We just ordered a lot of new Coast Guard cutters, beautiful, the most magnificent ship. They look like yachts with lots of guns on them. So I don't know, I haven't seen any report like that, but certainly we want them to remain a great force, and they are.
You are a peacemaker, and you did the peace in all the 9 months
Yes.
around the world. I would like to ask Mr. Mamdani, you've accused the U.S. government of committing genocide in Gaza while President Trump was working on peace. Why that?
I've spoken about the Israeli government committing genocide, and I've spoken about our government funding.
By the way, just real quick on this. First of all, Mamdani is very, very clear on his opposition to sort of racism and Zionism, and he doesn't believe that the United States should be funding a government that is waging a genocidal war against another ethnicity in Palestine. And again, very clever for him to do this meeting, because you know what it's clear to me. It's clear to me that what's happening here is Donald Trump is the most attention-getting thing in the universe, honestly. Like, if you want to like generate attention, if you want to get eyeballs on something, Donald Trump is the number one getter of eyeballs and earballs, whatever. And so for Zoran to be standing next to him and to have half an hour to articulate a few things is just fucking brilliant. Like, what other Democrat is going to have the most watched man on the universe to give a few talking points on? And here he is going ahead and just like boldly labeling Israel as a genocidal state. And by the way, he's correct about that. Not only has the UN now reached that conclusion, the ICJ has a preliminary finding of genocide, and the vast majority of genocide scholars, including the International Association of Genocide Scholars, which includes such figures as Ross Siegel and Craig, I can't remember his last name, but like other, historians like Avi Shlaim and Ilan Pape. These are both Israeli Jewish historians, and pretty much every genocide scholar in the world just about agrees, and Amnesty International agrees that Israel has committed a genocide. But the fact is that in American media, most mainstream media doesn't characterize it like that, even though it's so clearly and objectively the case. And so for Zoran Mamdani to be standing in the Oval Office next to the President of the United States to have just a quick second to call it a genocide is profound, honestly. Very profound.
Why that?
I've spoken about the Israeli government committing genocide, and I've spoken
Right
about
there.
our government funding it. And I shared with the president in our meeting about the concern that many New Yorkers have of wanting their tax dollars to go towards the benefit of New Yorkers and their ability to afford basic dignity. And what we see right now is we're in the 9th consecutive year of more than 100,000 school children being homeless in our city. And there's a desperate need not only for the following of human rights, but also the following through on the promises we've made New Yorkers. And I appreciated the meeting we had and the work that we can do.
Do you agree that President Trump did do a peace and he worked hard to make the peace, because he worked hard to do the peace in the Middle East and everywhere? Do you agree with that?
I appreciate all efforts towards peace, and I shared with President Trump that when I spoke to Trump voters on Hillside Avenue, including one of whom was a pharmacist that spoke about how President Trump's father actually went to that pharmacy not too far from Jamaica Estates, that people were tired of seeing our tax dollars fund endless wars. And I also believe that we have to follow through on the international human rights, and I know that still today those are being violated, and that continues to be work that has to be done no matter where we're speaking of.
All right. So did you see that just now? Donald Trump said that's true. He just a second ago when
States that people were tired of seeing our
Right
tax
here.
dollars fund endless wars, and I also believe that
right there. So Zoran has changed the topic a little bit. He's broadened the topic from Israeli genocide. Says Israel's committing a genocide, and then he says the American people are sick and tired of our taxpayer money going to fund forever wars. And Donald Trump says it's true. I mean, again, he's not only getting the most attention for this issue that anybody in America has ever has gotten recently. But he's got the president agreeing with the slightly broader premise right after he says Israel is committing a genocide. That's a big deal.
You have to follow through on the international human rights, and I know that still today those are being violated, and that continues to be work that has to be done no matter where we're speaking of.
Mr. President, question for Mr. Thank you, Mr. President. Do you view the mayor-elect as the true leader of the Democrat Party? And do you think Leader Schumer's and Leader Jeffries, have to follow his lead?
Well, look, I hope they have great leaders. This is a man that right now I think is focused in New York City. I really think he has a chance to do a great job. We're going to help him, but I really think he has a chance to do a great job. But I'll let you answer that. You consider yourself the leader of the Democrats? I think it's more appropriate for him.
I consider myself the next mayor of New York City, and I keep my horizons firmly on New York City, and I appreciate the meeting with the president, which focused again on the 5 boroughs and whether New Yorkers could afford to live there.
By the way, being the mayor of New York City is a big deal.
Absolutely.
I always said, one of the things I would love to be someday is the mayor of New York City. Being the mayor of New York, and especially now, because I think you're at really a turning point, one way or the other. It could go great, or it can go in a different direction, and I think you really have a chance to make it great.
Mr. President, you say you love New York City. Mr. Mamdani, does New York City love President Trump?
New York City loves a future that is affordable, and I can tell you that there were more New Yorkers who voted for President Trump in the most recent presidential election because of that focus on cost of living, and I'm looking forward to working together to deliver on that affordability agenda.
I got a lot of votes. One more, go ahead. 1 or 2 more, go ahead. I tell you, the press has eaten this thing up. I've had a lot of meetings with the heads of major countries. Nobody cared. This meeting that you people have gone crazy. Outside you have hundreds of people waiting. This is just a small little group. For some reason, the press has found this to be a very interesting meeting.
All right, so again, just unnecessarily heaping praise onto Zoran here by basically saying he's generated more buzz and excitement than Trump's meeting with all the other world leaders that he's ever met with, basically. And that's kind of true. Like I looked outside and I saw the feed from outside, and there were like 100 reporters out there, and like nobody knew that this was happening until just a few minutes before it happened. So I mean, they knew the meeting was happening. They didn't know there'd be a press availability or questions. So again, heaping praise on Zoran is wonderful.
Biggest people in the world, they come over from countries nobody cares, but they did care about this meeting, and it was a great meeting. Go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. President, I was going to ask you exactly that. Why do you think there's so much more, so much excitement around this than even some foreign leaders?
Because I think he's different. All right, I think he's different, and that can be in a very positive way. But I think he's different than, your typical guy runs, wins, becomes mayor maybe, and nothing exciting. Because he has a chance to really do something great for New York. New York is at a very critical point, and he does need the help of the federal government to really succeed, and we're going to be helping him. But he's different than, your average candidate. He came out of nowhere. I said he has a great campaign manager standing over there. He came out of nowhere. Would you start off at 1 or 2? And then I watched. I said, who is this guy? He was at 1. Then he was at 3, then he was at 5, then he was at 9. Then he went up to 17. I said, that's getting a little bit interesting, right? And then all of a sudden he wins a primary that nobody expected he was going to win. It's a great tribute. I mean, it's an amazing thing that he did.
And I'll just add one thing to what the president said. Is one thing I also appreciated is in our meeting to appreciate a portrait of FDR and the incredible work that was done with the New Deal, and also in thinking about what it can look like when the federal government and New York City government work together to deliver on affordability. It can be transformative.
We have a great portrait of FDR that I found in the vaults.
All right, so a couple things. First of all, we'll get back to this in a second, but Donald Trump is claiming to have found a long lost portrait of FDR. In truth, the portrait of FDR that I think he's referring to has been hung up by various presidents. I think it was, Obama most recently, but I could be wrong. The point is that he didn't find shit, let's be honest. But secondly, watch this. FDR is by far the most leftist president the country's ever had. And watch what happens when Zoran, for obvious reasons, wanted to highlight and stand next to the portrait of FDR. But let's see what happens when Donald Trump is given a chance to talk about it.
That was missing for years. I found it, and I put it up. He's a Democrat, to the best of my knowledge. He's a Democrat. And when the mayor saw that portrait, he said, "Sir, do you mind if I have a picture taken by that portrait?" It's an amazing portrait. I hope the picture comes out good. But it's an amazing portrait in the cabinet room. So he's a big fan of the New Deal, I guess, and of FDR. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. President. You said that you both spoke about crime. There are many police officers set to come off the rolls at the end of this year in New York City. Are you going to allow those police to be replaced with police officers, actual cops? And are you going to require that that happens? Would there be some consequence if the staff
happens? But
so, Blondie here gets a second question. Again, she's the one who asked the stupid question about why he flew here. Now she's asking about Mamdani's plan to take cops off the street, which is, again, a false premise. Mamdani said he's not hiring a lot of new cops, right? So he basically says, the problem with the New York crime situation, which is actually, New York crime statistics are pretty good. Like, if you actually look at a worst crime cities in America or something, yeah, you always get a handful of the same places. Memphis is always one. I knew somebody from Memphis. Oakland, St. Louis, Baltimore, Detroit, Alexandria, Cleveland, New Orleans, Monroe, Colorado, Alabama, Arkansas. Quite a few of them are in the South. Let's go to a different. Let's see if I can find like a better. Well, it's hard to trust the FBI right now, but well, anyway. Is there an AI? Yeah, the AI basically agrees. Memphis, Detroit, Baltimore, St. Louis, Oakland, Albuquerque. Again, a lot of these cities are places that were affected by sort of generational poverty, often associated with, frankly, the issue of slavery in our country. But New York is not even close. If you were to type, where does New York City rank in crime, 3,000 out of 100,000, and violent is 671, ranking it lower than cities like Las Vegas or San Jose. Yeah, so it's for a big humongous city, it's doing pretty well. And I could dive into that. That's not the point of the stream though. So again, she's starting with a premise of New York. Okay, I don't know who this is. Somebody on my Twitch is trolling me. That's fine. But anyway, she's kind of stupid, and she's asking, why does Mamdani want to eliminate cops? And that's not his position. His position is, let's fund the actual cause of crime. Let's fund the things that prevent the cause of crime, not the symptom of crime, which is what police do.
Again, that's going to be ultimately the mayor's decision.
What's your answer?
Is that I look forward to delivering public safety with the NYPD, and I've said over the course of our campaign that we have the number of police officers today. They are the ones that's budgeted about 35,000 headcount. And I think the key thing is that we have to make it easier for police to focus on police work, not ask them to respond to 200,000 mental health calls a year.
So is that a reduction from what you're at right now? Or are you committing to maintaining the same level of cops?
I've committed over the course of the campaign to maintain the 35,000. That's the headcount that we had through the campaign.
So again, he's clarifying his position isn't to reduce cops. She's continuing to premise her question on the false idea that that's his position. But her premise is based on lies. It's based on right-wing manipulation of reality.
Replace them with caseworkers, social workers.
No, I've said that's the headcount that we want. What we need to do is make sure they can focus on serious crime.
And he just retained a great police commissioner, I believe, right?
Yes, we did. Commissioner Tisch.
If the newspapers are correct.
That one they're correct about.
He retained, I think, somebody that is she's a good friend of some of the people in my family, of Ivanka, and they say she's really good, really competent, and he just retained her, so that's a good sign.
Mr. President, are there still topics that you see the two of you disagreeing on in the future, and do you think you'll have more meetings like this?
There will be topics that we disagree on. I think we'll probably come to a conclusion, and ultimately, he'll convince me, or I'll convince him. It's for the good of New York. Ultimately, it's for the good of New York. I don't care about affiliations or parties or anything else. I want to see if this city could be unbelievable, if he could be a spectacular success, I'd be very happy.
Do you think you guys will meet more in the future too?
Excuse?
Do you think you'll meet again in the future, throughout the administration?
I think we will. I think we will. I hope we do. I enjoyed the meeting. We had a great meeting. Please.
Mr. President, Republican Elise Stefanik has campaigned multiple times by calling Zoran Mamdani a jihadist. Do you think you're standing next to a jihadist right now in the Oval Office?
No, I don't, but...
Okay, so again, stupid question, stupid premise. Elise Stefanik is a horrible, desperate person who is herself a virulent racist. She's an anti-Semite herself, and she is a Islamophobe. Now, Zoran is a Muslim, from his upbringing. The reporter asked this question about whether he's a jihadist, but she kind of laughed while she was asking it, knowing that it was an unserious question from an unserious person. And Donald Trump, of course, again, immediately defended him and stuck up for him. So that's the premise of this video, is that Donald Trump got steamrolled so bad by this guy that he's sticking up for him against conservative framed press questions.
She's out there campaigning, and, you say things sometimes in a campaign.
Isn't that sort of
She's a very capable person.
Isn't
But
that kind of
you really have to ask her about that. But no, I don't particularly. I think I met with I met with a man who's a very rational person. I met with a man who really wants to see New York be great again. And I can say again, because New York was great. When I came down to Washington initially, the city was so hot. It was doing great. We were having some telltale
Donald Trump is sexually attracted to New York City.
Signs of problems. We had a mayor that...
By the way, so am I. That's the one thing we have in common.
Was not doing a great job, but still, it was moving along. And it went bad. It really went, pretty bad. And I think it's been at lower points, but it went pretty bad. I think he can bring it back. Now, the question is, will he bring it back all the way? Will he bring it back greater than ever before, which is, I guarantee, that's his wish. I think he wants to make it greater than ever before. And if he can, we'll be out there cheering. I'll be cheering for him. Okay? Thank you very much, everybody.
You chose not to answer the question about the synagogue protest.
Thank you very much.
All right, there it is. So just a few concluding comments there. First of all, great meeting. Obviously, Mamdani was capable of convincing Trump about a lot of things, basically turning him around on the perception that was generated by the right-wing media about him. He basically convinced Trump, hey, I'm not so bad. I'm a normal guy. I have the same priorities as you, and we have a couple disagreements about how we get there, but I'm very rational, and frankly, some of my left populist ideas are the same kind of things that you campaigned on. Secondly, he was so fucking charismatic that he convinced Trump that not only to debunk the sort of caricature that the right-wing media has of him, but to actually go out of his way, expend political capital to stick up for him and to rebut right-wing premised media questions. Third thing, Zoran is super brilliant for doing this meeting. Not only did he convince Trump that he's not an enemy, which probably reduces the chance of, for example, an ICE occupation in New York City, reduces the chance of loss of federal funding, reduces the chance of sort of a public spat with Trump, but it also generated eyeballs on Zoran Mamdani in a way that a lot of other things wouldn't. And so, frankly, I think that it was a brilliant way to platform his ideas, which, by the way, if you were to poll his ideas, if you take the labels away, you take the politics away, and you just poll the American people on, for example, freezing rent, raising the minimum wage, reducing the cost of busing, making childcare free, doing programs to make groceries more affordable, building more housing. All of these are popular ideas. And regardless of party, just because it's a left-wing idea doesn't mean it's an unpopular idea. It's clearly a popular idea. And so Donald Trump is now more like, well, two things. Trump is more likely to be okay with some of that stuff. But again, Mamdani is getting eyeballs, getting attention on these left-wing populist ideas. And that is more valuable than, millions of dollars in ads, frankly. The attention economy is where it's at. It's the most important thing in politics these days. And to watch him just completely steamroll Trump, get him on board, and use the cameras that he rarely gets access to make points about, um, investing in communities, and maybe we don't need a police state. And also, by the way, Israel committed a genocide. That's brilliant. So I have nothing but praise, nothing but positive feedback from this meeting. Mamdani continues to impress me and so many other people, and he's off to a really good start. He takes office in about 40 days. Yeah, exactly 40 days from today, Mamdani will take office in New York City. So I'm very excited about that era for New York City. And then just one last plug. If you're watching this, please go ahead and check out the Trans Tipping Point podcast YouTube channel. That's going to be my main place where I do my podcast from. But I will stream and publish the podcast to other platforms, including Twitch, Facebook, etc. I'm still working on setting up the infrastructure, but the address to watch further content, I mean, you can certainly watch it wherever you're watching it now. I'll try to always maintain that, but definitely check out youtube.com/@TheTransTippingPoint, just like it sounds. We'll be doing a video a little late, but to sort of a Trans Visibility Week and Trans Day Visibility, which was yesterday. And we're going to be doing a Gender 101 produced video on this channel to help folks understand that issue as well. But thank you so much for watching, and we will